Hello, gentle viewers. This is Indian, and I welcome you to the last episode of the tutorial series for Out of the Park Baseball 18. Beginning next week with the next episode, we'll be going back and reliving the adventures of the 1933-1934 St. Louis Browns. This episode is going to be one of the most difficult to talk about because what makes a pitcher great or not so great is both incredibly complex and almost impossible to predict. Remember when I talked about aging curves for hitters, how most hitters tended to follow the same? Throw all that out the window with pitchers. There are pitchers that are very good, very young in their careers. They get hurt and they don't pitch very well anymore. There are pitchers who pitch only well at the end of their careers, like Jamie Moyer, and don't pitch very well in the beginning of their career. Pitchers are much more of a crapshoot than hitters. Much more. And so we need to think a lot more carefully about how to evaluate pitchers. I'm going to focus on starters. If I have time during the episode, I'll also talk about reliefs. But starters are much more important to get right. A good bullpen is probably worth 3 to 4 wins over the course of a season. Enough to get you a playoff spot. A good starter is probably worth... A single good starter is worth as much as a good bullpen. So you want to focus on starting pitches because that's where you're going to get your... So let's look at Tommy Thomas. Okay. Just like hitters, pitchers are generally broken down. All this stuff is the same for pitchers and hitters. Status for pitchers adds additional information that's really important to know. How many pitches they threw today, how many pitches they threw yesterday, how many pitches they threw a couple of days before. This tells you, if you want to be so inclined, when you should or when you shouldn't start a pitcher. You do not want to start a tired pitcher. They're going to get their brains hammered because they're going to throw lots and lots of really easy to hit baseballs. Okay. Pitching ratings have 3 main stats. Stuff is your ability to strike someone out. Movement is your ability to prevent hard hits, hard contact. Control is your ability to not walk somebody. And all 3 of these kind of fit together. There's a lot more interrelation than there is between hitting. If someone's got really good stuff but really bad control, you get a Nolan Ryan situation where they strike out lots of batters but also walk lots of batters. And a pitcher with good stuff is more likely to get somebody out with a strikeout, and that might mean less pitches. It all fits together. These are the 3 basic, just like hitters. Pitchers tend to pitch well against certain hitters. Righties get righties out, lefties get lefties out. Again, and we can see the same thing exists down here. This part is somewhat easy. The next thing to consider is pitches. Every pitcher in Major League Baseball has between 2 and 6 pitches. In real life, some pitchers have 1 pitch, and some pitchers have like 8 or 9 pitches. But for the purposes of Out of the Park Baseball 18, the most you can have is 6, maybe 7. You might be able to have 7 pitches, but you definitely can't have like 8 or 9. And this is what makes judging pitchers in OOTP so hard. There is not currently a way to track how often pitchers throw certain pitches in OOTP 18. Which means your best bet is based on the actual pitch type. Assuming that someone's going to throw a good pitch more often than a bad pitch. Right now, Tommy Thomas is a pitcher with a decent fastball, a below-average slider, and a bad curveball. If Tommy Thomas was pitching in 1993 instead of 1933, he would get his brains destroyed. He's got 1 good pitch. He's not going to fool most Major League hitters. But in the 1930s, the cost for fucking up is usually a single. In 1993, the cost for fucking up is often a home run. And so pitch mix doesn't matter as much. But every starter should have at least 3 pitches, 2 of which should be average or above in an ideal situation. And again, you can play a little bit faster and looser with this in the 1930s than you can in the 1990s. In real life, different pitches do different things. Fastballs tend to go straight or move a little bit. Curveballs break up and down. Sliders break left and right. And there's other pitches, and we'll talk about some others later on that just totally change the rules. But these are the basic pitches. And we'll talk about a few others later on. Okay. These feed into overall and potential. His fastball is the only pitch that's average, but he also throws fairly hard for someone in the 1930s. 90 to 92 miles an hour is actually quite fast in the 1930s. Today, almost every team's got a guy who throws 100 miles an hour or faster. In the 30s, that was much less common, which is part of the reason home runs were less common. It all fits together for pitchers. I'm going to say that probably another 10 times, but it's always important. Pitcher ratings, ground ball, fastball tendency. Ideally, in a perfect world, you want every pitcher to have a ground ball tendency because ground balls do less damage than fly balls. However, if you play in a park like modern-day Dodger Stadium, which is really, really big and tends to depress home runs, a fly ball pitcher can be really, really good. If you have an extreme fly ball pitcher in Coors Field in Colorado, which is actually above sea level, so the air is super thin, you're going to get destroyed. Park factor matters a lot more for pitchers than it does for hitters. It matters for hitters, but it's crucial for pitchers. If I were playing in Colorado, I would get rid of Tommy Thomas as quickly as I could. He's a pitcher who mostly throws fastballs, and not great ones at that, and he's an extreme fly ball pitcher. He's going to get hammered. Velocity is the average range of the pitcher's fastball. It's always based on fastball. In OOTP, every pitcher throws a fastball. This is true in the majors, too. It's the first pitcher taught how to throw as a baseball player. You throw fastballs. This is the average velocity. You can reliably count that if Tommy Thomas threw 100 fastballs, most of them, about 75 to 80%, would be in that range. Some might be faster, some might be slower, but roughly speaking, that's what we're talking about. Stamina. Super important. Stamina is how many innings a pitcher can pitch. In the 1930s, when bullpens weren't very well established, stamina was super important. It's crazy important. Even today it's important. Like the late Roy Halladay, rest in peace, was really good at throwing complete games for a modern pitcher. As you saw in the Statistics episode, we have a pitcher who's thrown 25 complete games. There are entire teams that don't throw 25 complete games today. In fact, I would say there's probably years in the majors we haven't seen 25 complete games, let alone from one pitcher. But stamina is super important. It's how many balls you can throw without getting tired. When pitchers get tired, they get worse. Fastballs go in the center of the plate instead of at the corners. Curveballs don't curve. Sliders don't slide. Everything starts to look like a fastball. And if a hitter can tell what pitch is coming, he's going to have a better chance of hitting it. Or if it doesn't matter what pitch is coming. Okay. Pitcher position ratings are always based on position ranks. Technically, infield matters too, but this doesn't matter as much. Pitcher defense is honestly one of the least important things. You can have a Gold Glove pitcher who can't pitch, but he's really good at stabbing the ball as it zips past him on the mound. That's not enough to have a pitcher. It's meaningless. Pitcher defense doesn't matter. Put it out of your mind. Batting rings for pitchers matters in the National League. Personality, by the way, may be important, may not be important. It's important for you to decide how that matters when you're evaluating players. I have no idea whether it matters or whether it doesn't. Just like hitters, I love the statistical record here. I can't emphasize this enough. Out of the park baseball has gotten a lot better about deciding, I need to look for trends. What numbers do I need to look at trending? And just spits it right out in front of you, and it's glorious. For pitchers in particular, watch the rate stats. I don't see hits per 9 here, which is a little unfortunate, but not totally unworkable. Because hits per 9 is typically something a pitcher can't control. However, they most certainly can control home runs, walks, and strikeouts. This is the most important thing. Home runs per 9 matters much on the park as they do anything else. But if you see like a spike, it might mean that a pitcher's pitch is getting worse, Or maybe he's just getting old. Tommy Thomas is 33. He's in that part of his career where I expect him to start declining. But again, with pitchers, you can never tell. The best starters are good year in and year out. But the average starters, it might not matter so much. His walk rate has actually consistently gone down in his career, which is a very good trend to see and not at all a common one. His strikeout rate has stayed mostly stable. And then we have to compare BABIP to everything else. These three numbers are your best clue for a pitcher's getting worse, getting better, or staying the same. BABIP is really important but has to be considered in context. WHIP just tells you how good he's at preventing hits. I find that's what makes the most difference. Because it's walks and hits over innings pitched. Almost always is going to come from hits. Sometimes walks, usually hits. Okay. For pitchers, we have to dig a little bit deeper. And BABIP is part of this. Because this is the one number that's going to fluctuate severely, we need to compare it to a pitcher's overall season. This will tell us if we think the pitcher is getting better, getting worse, or if he's been really lucky one year and we maybe shouldn't expect it again. So, we always look at BABIP compared to his career average. These are career totals / career averages. So he's been an average 4.24 ERA. If it's a counting stat, it's a total. If it's a rate stat, it's an average. And we see his normal BABIP is a 301. This makes him a fairly normal pitcher. In the past 3 years, something has happened. We don't know what. Where he's gotten a lot better at preventing hits. We can look at actually hits per 9 here. I think it's expanded pitching stats too, yeah. Look at this. He was allowing 10 hits per 9 innings, and all of a sudden that's just disappeared. 3 years in a row. 1 year is a mistake. 2 years, maybe luck. 3 years is a trend. We need to analyze ourselves. Why has his hits gone down by so much? I'm going to tell you the most likely answer. He's an extreme fly ball pitcher. How long has Bruce Campbell started in right field? Would you look at that? The last 3 seasons? Do you see how everything fits together with pitchers? We took and added an amazing outfielder, and all of a sudden his hits per 9 have dropped. Everything fits together with pitchers. So this is why we always have to investigate more to figure out why pitchers are doing especially bad or especially good. Because there's always multiple factors going on there. And it's so important to do that. Let's look at another pitcher, just so I can show you how things work differently for different pitchers. Let's look at Larry French. Larry French may be one of the best trades we've ever made. Because he's been consistently a top-line starter. And I'm pretty sure we gave up next to nothing for him. Or at least very little. We gave up Clay Hopper, who sucks, and Kerry Silf, who sucks, for an 18-year-old pitcher who's just been a really important part of our team. Notice he's got more pitches. 2 pitches we've seen before, the fastball and the curveball. We're also going to talk a little bit about pitch types here, too, because I think it's an important thing to talk about now. He's a harder thrower, but he's a ground ball pitcher. So if we see his hits per 9s drop off dramatically, we should expect that to come from better infield defense, not so much better outfield defense. Or luck. And we'll analyze him further in a minute, but I'll talk about pitches first. Curveballs tend to be about 10 to 15 miles an hour slower than fastballs, and they break straight down. Or they might bend straight down like a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. Depends on the pitcher's curveball. The forkball is called the forkball because when you're holding the ball, in your hand, your fingers fork like a tuning fork. You spread your fingers out quite a bit. Forkballs are very weird because they're about the same speed as a second tier fastball, but they dip late. Not like curveballs. Curveballs are usually very smooth. Ball comes toward the plate and starts to fall off the table, so to speak. Forkballs are much more of a dip, which makes it, as a more stud movement, means it tends to generate more strikeouts and ground balls. His best pitch is a forkball. I have no surprise at all that he's a ground ball pitcher. Everything is tied together. He also throws a screwball. Screwballs are very, very weird, and they're very hard to throw, and very few pitchers throw them well. But if you do, it is the best weapon against a pitcher who's the opposite, or against a hitter who's the opposite hand as you. So if a left-handed pitcher like Larry French throws a slider, it's going to break from left to right. A screwball starts on the left part of the plate, breaks to the right, and breaks back to the left. If you look at, if you watch the path of the ball from the catcher's perspective, it looks like a letter C. A regular letter C for a left-handed pitcher. Because it starts on the left, it breaks to the right like a slider would, and then it breaks back to the left. It's not a very quick break. Screwballs tend to be slower than sliders. But it's such a weird motion for a pitch to make that hitters have a very hard time hitting it. And very few pitchers in history can throw screwballs well. They were much more common back in the older days because hitters throw harder. Why does that matter? Why does it matter that screwballs are harder to throw? There's a greater likelihood that you'll blow out your arm. One of the most, 100,000% most important stats is injury proneness. Pitchers that are durable are worth more than their weight in gold. Notice French doesn't have great stamina, but he still pitches a lot of innings because he doesn't get hurt. So important. He's also a harder thrower, and he's a ground ball pitcher. Okay. Now let's break down the trends. We notice his walks per nine, apart from 1929, which is probably just a bad year, his walks have plummeted. He's been consistent about hardly ever walking batters. His strikeouts have varied. It looks like he's starting to lose a little bit off his fastball maybe because he's not striking out people as often as he used to. But he's still being incredibly effective. Just incredibly effective. Notice why I haven't mentioned ERA once. It's because ERA is a terrible trend for how a pitcher is going to do from year to year. It's a decent trend of how a pitcher is doing that particular year, but not for year to year. So good. Let's check his trends. We're looking at the advanced stats. Never mind. We'll go back to basic. His BABIP is right around 311, and he hasn't really moved much from that. It's been going down. In this case, because it's been going down rather gradually, and there's not the dramatic drop-off, it's been gradual. This probably means he's just been getting better. He's been learning how to pitch better. Which means we should expect either the trend to continue, or we should expect it to stabilize. Either which would be very, very good. 28, WAR 3.8. 29, WAR 3.5. 30, WAR 4.5. He's been getting better. Again, WAR is highly dependent on strikeouts and walks for pitchers. You can be a great pitcher and not do either of those things. Maybe not innings. You kind of have to throw a lot of innings to be a good pitcher. But he's also throwing more innings each year. Except for 1933, he lost a tiny bit of innings. But then he doesn't have much stamina. Okay. So we've compared two starters. Let's now look at a reliever. Because relievers are very, very difficult. Change the pictures. Are the most fungible players in Major League Baseball. Relievers change a lot from year to year. More than hitters, more than starters, relievers change a lot. So the rules for relievers, what we need to prize and what we don't need to prize, change quite drastically. Because they pitch fewer innings, there's a lot more variance in how they'll do from year to year. Let's look at Jim Turner. Ignore saves. Saves just tell you a reliever gets lots of save opportunities. They tell you almost literally nothing else. Jim Turner has a very good profile for a reliever. He throws very hard, he gets lots of strikeouts, and he's pretty good at not walking hitters. These are all things you want in a reliever. You can have a reliever that doesn't strike a lot of people out, but honestly, it's very hard to see success for a reliever like that. For a reliever, starters basically need at least 3 pitches. Relievers can get away with 1 or 2 because they're going to be facing fewer batters, and it matters more that they can be consistent. Stamina is the least important thing. Jim Turner used to be a starter. We've converted him into a reliever. He's a really good one. If we made him a starter, he wouldn't be nearly so good. I have not talked about hold runners at all, have I? Hold runners is the pitcher's ability to throw a runner out on the bases. So if a guy tries to steal second, he's smart enough to catch out of the corner of his eye, spin around, and throw the guy out. Andy Pettitte was amazing at this. Amazing. Just so good. I see a twitch out of the corner of my eye, spin around, throw to first, he's out. That's what hold runners is. Basically means the base runner can't take a big lead off of you. So judging relievers, you almost have to throw the stats out the window because the stats are going to vary just so much. Because of this particular stat right here, home runs per 9. For relievers, it's going to be all over the bloody map. And you can't really predict it. Strikeouts you can predict, walks you can predict. Home runs you really can't. So how do you decide if a reliever is good? You have to watch strikeouts, walks, and strikeout to walk ratio. At the end of the day, a pitcher who strikes people out is more valuable than one that doesn't. So even if there's variance from year to year, from game to game, you know that a pitcher who gets lots of strikeouts is going to be far more valuable as a relief pitcher. And that's what you have to focus on. ERA is not going to help you much. Because again, it's going to change so much from year to year because home runs will change from year to year. And there's almost nothing you can do to predict home runs off a reliever. Starters, if you see home run 9 either dip or spike, you need to find out why. For relievers, it's just small sample size. It is almost impossible to judge relievers from year to year. This is why we use, if you really want to tell if a reliever is good, you check WPA. Johnny Stewart was our best. Johnny Stewart made it more likely we'd win the game when he came into the game. Which makes sense. He was actually a pretty good pitcher last year, although strikeout per 9 is less than I'd like. Milt Schaffner was a terrible... this just says that he did make it more likely the team would win. There's lots of reasons that could happen. Oh, the game doesn't measure run support at all for relievers. That's interesting to know. I had no idea. So yeah, this is always going to be 0 for relievers, it looks like. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's something I did not expect. I did not expect. Now, using relievers intelligently depends on their role. You want to make sure you've picked the best possible inning. If a pitcher's really good, you want to make him a stopper. It means he'll get the most innings out of the bullpen, and whenever there's a fire, he'll come and put it out. Relievers used to be called firemen for exactly that reason. Pitchers with really good stamina, long relief is a good way to give a starter some reps. If you want someone to maybe start down the road, but you don't want to put him in the rotation, you make him a long reliever. He'll get probably 2 to 3 innings. And it doesn't matter that much if he doesn't pitch that great because he's just there to soak up innings so the rest of the bullpen doesn't pitch him. You generally want a guy who can get lefties out. And you generally want like a setup guy or something like that. Here's all the different roles. Closers only come in at the end of the game. Stoppers come in whenever the game is tight. Setup, they come in right before the closer. Specialists do left-handed or right-handed. Middle relief is whenever. Long relief, and then emergency SP. Emergency SP means if a starter gets hurt, they're going to turn to the emergency starter to fill out the role. For relief pitchers, the best relievers are the best relievers. It doesn't matter where you use them. So what matters most is using the reliever when it's most effective to use him. If a pitcher gives up home runs, you want to make them a long reliever, where a home run will matter less. Make sense? I think it does. And that's the heart and soul of relief pitchers. Never get attached to a relief pitcher. Just because a reliever was good last year doesn't mean he'll be good next year. Just because a reliever was bad last year doesn't mean he'll be good next year. That's why you have to find the things that don't change a lot. Strikeouts, strikeout to walk ratio, and walk ratio. They typically don't change very much. And focus on those. Johnny Stewart by WPA was our best reliever this season. But look at that walk rate and look at that strikeout rate. That is not what you want to see from a reliever. BABIP is also going to be completely wild for relievers. And you can't really track BABIP on a reliever because they typically don't pitch enough. I would probably not put Johnny Stewart in a major role next season because the strikeout numbers shaved off so dramatically. He might be losing velocity. Let's check development. No, he hasn't dropped any velocity. It'll actually say here for pitchers drop velocity. He is trending in the wrong direction, though. This is troubling. This is troubling. And he also throws really, really slowly. Again, relative to, other baseball players. I've done like one of those kitty tosses that I threw like 50 miles an hour at like the age of 19. I'm not a very big person. I'm not very strong. If I ever try to throw in the major leagues, I would get absolutely hammered. If my ball even made it to the home plate, which I can't even guarantee that would. Other pitch types to talk about. Change-ups. The change-up is one of the best pitches in baseball if you're really, really good at it. Change-ups, like fastballs, typically don't move a lot. Change-ups move more than fastballs. The difference is a changeup is 10 to 15 miles an hour slower than a fastball. But coming out of the pitcher's hand, they look identical. In order to hit a fastball, a hitter has to assume it's a fastball and has to kind of start his swing a little bit early. If you've ever seen a hitter totally miss a pitch and it looks silly, it's almost always a changeup. You know that hitter thought it was a fastball. It comes in, it's super slow, and he swings way too early. And I've seen batters fall on their butts. And it's hilarious. A good changeup and a good fastball together are better than almost any other pitch-up combination you can think of. Sinkers are a little bit like forkballs, but the break is less dramatic. They're somewhere between a curveball and forkball in terms of break. Forkballs and split finger pitches are the same. They're thrown a little bit differently, but the effect is about the same. Again, it's that hard, sudden break. It's not a gentle break. Sinkers are between that. Sinkers do a very, very light version of the screwball motion, the letter C. But it's very, very gradual. And it usually doesn't make it all the way back. But it does kind of curve just a little bit. And the idea being is that because it kind of tumbles, the batter hits the top of the ball and not the bottom and just beats it into the ground. Let's see. Does anyone else have any interesting pitches I can talk about? What's that? Is that a forkball? Okay. Screwball we talked about. A knuckle curve is a curveball you throw a different way. The break is a lot more dramatic, but it's also a very hard pitch to control, like a knuckleball is. That slider, what is it? Split, sinker. There's no cutters because cutters weren't invented until the 80s and 90s. What is it? Circle change? Circle change is a regular change up. It's thrown a different way. It breaks more, and it's actually slower. Do they not have splitters? Oh, here we go. Yeah, and it's being historical. So forkballs were very common. Splitters were invented, depending on who you ask, in the 70s or 80s. Splitters are much harder than even forkballs. They're almost at fastball velocity, which is what makes them so nasty. So you talk about fastballs, changeup, curveball, slider, sinker, splitter. Cutters are fastballs with a very, very, very sharp break. And they only break in one direction. They only break in one direction. And it's a very quick cut. So let's call it cutter. Knuckleballs are the weirdest pitch in baseball, and almost no one can throw them well. You throw the ball in such a weird way that it depends entirely on the wind. The wind will catch the ball and push it around like a wiffle ball, and you never know where it's going to go, and it almost always ends up badly. But it's a really cool pitch to see if you see the person throw it right. So, what do you take away from this? How do you judge pitchers? You always check stuff, movement, and control first. That has to be stop number one. Because these are the things that are common to all pitchers, and the better they are at those three things, the better your pitcher is going to be. Number two, you check the stats, just like you check with the batters. Never rely on ratings alone. Ever. Ever. Because ratings change a lot more than... Because ratings will change. Pitchers get better. Pitchers get worse. And if you just go by ratings, you'll be surprised every time. You have to trust statistics too. Statistical record is what someone actually did. Ratings are what someone might do. What someone did is far more reliable than what someone might do. For starters, you need at least 3 pitches. 2 of them should be average or higher. You can get away in earlier parts of the game's history with 1 good pitch, but you almost always need at least 2. The more pitches a pitcher throws, the better. In real life, it doesn't work that way. In OOTP, it does. In real life, if a pitcher throws like 10 pitches, it means like 9 of those pitches are crap. And it's just about, I don't know what pitch is coming, therefore I'm harder to hit. Extreme ground ball pitchers are almost always better than extreme fly ball. Again, design your team around them the best you can. Defense matters nothing at all. And for relievers, again, trust the strikeout ratio, trust the walk ratio. Don't necessarily trust hits, especially don't trust home runs. I think that's it for the tutorial series. I hope you found it useful. And I'll talk more about actual player evaluation, how to pick good players, when to trade players, how to trade them, what to look for when we do actual games again. Because it's just easier. But that'll be next week. For now, please comment down below if you have any questions. If things don't make sense to you, if things do make sense, but you think something might change a little bit, please let me know. Comment, subscribe, like, tell all your friends about the video. And until next time, this has been Avindian, and I bid you good day.